Hi, Manna family. I can imagine that many people are praying more as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. The nation of Israel is a good example of prayer for us, even looking back over the span of thousands of years. God had moved Jacob to Egypt, where his family grew from about 70 into a nation of 2 million people. This took place over about 400 years, and sometime during their stay in Egypt, the Israelites had been enslaved by the Egyptians. Exodus 1:11 tells us the story, beginning in verse 11. So they, the Egyptians, appointed taskmasters over the Israelites to afflict them with hard labor. And they made their lives bitter with hard labor in mortar and bricks, and in all kinds of labor in the field, all their labors which they rigorously imposed on them. And the sons of Israel sighed because of their bondage, and they cried out, and their cry for help because of their bondage rose up to God. So Israel began to pray and ask God for help. We don't know exactly how long they had been slaves in Egypt, but we know that they had been slaves for at least 80 years. God had a plan for his people, and he called Moses to be their human deliverer. Remember at the burning bush in the Midianite desert. Exodus 3 verse 7 says, And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and I have given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters, for I am aware of their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from that land into a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey. God says to Moses, I hear, I see, and I'm going to take action and bring my people out of Egypt into the good land of Canaan. It's important to understand that God always knows what people say when they pray. However, just because we ask for something doesn't mean that God will give us what we ask for or when we ask for it. God answers prayers, but he always answers them in only one of three ways. Yes, no, or wait. And sometimes wait's the hardest one, isn't it? When trouble knocks down the door of your life, prayer is often the last thing we do, not the first thing we do. We generally try and fix it ourselves before we ask God for help. We don't know exactly how long it took Israel to ask God for help after they were enslaved by the Egyptians. However, it's interesting that as of today, we in the United States have not yet had a national day of prayer specifically asking God for help with this coronavirus pandemic. I wonder, how bad does it have to get before we humble ourselves and pray? Maybe humility is one of the lessons that God is teaching us through this tiny virus. Whatever burden you're carrying today, and I know that many are carrying many burdens, roll it onto God's shoulder because he cares for you. 1 Peter 5 says, Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you at the proper time, casting all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Remember, we were designed by God to do life together.